Hi, HRN listeners. We're celebrating our 15th anniversary, and we have a really fun campaign and an ask for you. This 15th anniversary tour is aiming to bring you closer to unique food and music experiences in some of the most exciting cities in America. All the while, we're raising funds to support our work empowering the next generation of food systems storytellers through our fellowship programs. Here's how it works. Donate to HRN and be entered into a raffle in the city of your choice to win a dinner for two at a noteworthy restaurant and tickets for two to a concert at a prominent local venue. We have incredible partners in New York, Los Angeles, Philadelphia, Nashville, Las Vegas, Charleston, Asheville, and Ardmore, Pennsylvania, who have donated a meal for two and two tickets to a concert of the winner's choice. And all donations help fund our fellowship programs, where we're helping to build essential workforce readiness skills and food system storytelling skills. Check out heritageradionetwork.org/15 to donate and enter to win today. That's heritageradionetwork.org/15. Thank you.
Today's program has been brought to you by Artisanal Imports, an importer of specialty beers from England, Germany, Belgium, and beyond. For more information, visit www.artisanalimports.com.
You're listening to Heritage Radio Network, broadcasting live from Bushwick, Brooklyn. If you like this program, visit heritageradionetwork.org for thousands more.
Good evening, and welcome to Fuhmentaboudit on heritageradionetwork.org.
I'm Mary Izette.
And I'm Chris Kuzmi.
And we're your host for tonight's episode and every episode. So we're live every Monday night at 7:30 p.m. on heritageradionetwork.org. You can also find us archived at heritageradionetwork.org as well as iTunes.
That's right, and we air out in the back of Roberta's restaurant in Bushwick with a live studio audience that pays no attention to us at all through the glass. They're busy eating, and it's delicious. Here, you should come.
So that's true. It is delicious. Roberta's Pizza. So let's start with a few announcements. So I think we mentioned this last time, but I'm teaching my first Introduction to Homebrewing class at Brooklyn Kitchen on Thursday, April 11th at 6 p.m. It starts at 6 p.m. and it goes for around 2 hours, 2.5 hours. It's $145, and that gets you the full instruction. Plus, they serve some samples of beer, and you get a full kit, homebrewing kit, so that you can start brewing as soon as you get home.
That's awesome. How much is a kit generally at Brooklyn Homebrew? Do you know?
It says it's an $80 value.
That's cool.
So it's a pretty good deal. And if you just go to Brooklyn Kitchen website to their classes, you can find it on there. So if you're interested in learning to homebrew, you've never done it before, maybe you've done it and you need some more encouragement, I would invite you to join me on April 11th at Brooklyn Kitchen. The next announcement is Brooklyn Homebrew has a brand new Pro Brew kit. It's their Captain Lawrence Brewing Company's Liquid Gold clone. And they offer it in both partial mash and all grain, so I think that's pretty interesting. That's a great local brewery. That's a really delicious beer. So if you'd like to brew your very own version, head to Brooklyn Homebrew and pick up their kit.
These kind of projects are really fun, I think, because you really get to know your own brewing process and what your brewing system and what kind of happens. So if you actually get Captain Lawrence Liquid Gold in the bottle and then brew your own and taste the difference, you can see what kind of things are going on in your brew house, and you can make the proper adjustments to make that happen.
Absolutely. And it's also maybe if you like brewing pale ales or stouts or porters and you've never done a Belgian, or you're just getting into Belgians, this might be a good introduction to them. And you might learn some new techniques and materials.
New techniques and materials? I'm excited about our project that we did recently. We did a sour kettle mash. I think we talked a lot about it last week. Yep. But if you are in town in the beginning of April, we will be launching our Berliner Weiss, the Pillow Talk Series #1 at 508 Gastro Brewery. Super excited about it.
Yep, and we'll let you know that date when we come back. We're headed to CBC this week, so we're
What's the CBC, Mary?
Craft Brewers Conference. So Chris is going to represent 508 Gastro Brewing at the Craft Brewers Conference. It's a professional conference for brewers and related industries. So importers, distributors, bar owners, brew pubs, nano breweries, large breweries, everybody.
Anybody in the professional beer scene, from writers to retail to wholesale to buying to making.
Yep.
Yada yada.
And they have informational seminars about all kinds of things, from point of sale systems to sour brewing. So both technical brewing and more business type,
and if you're not in
business-driven
the
discussions.
and for breweries and planning too, if you're not in the business yet and you would like to be learning more and helping start your business, they do a lot of seminars on that too. So if you are thinking about starting one, definitely it's probably too late to go this week. It starts kind of the day after tomorrow. Tomorrow is the reception, our opening reception. But think about it for next year and go and learn. Hi, Jaren. How you doing? Just real quick about the CBC. I went to the CBC for the first time about 3 years ago when it was in Chicago, and it was my first CBC, and it was just amazing seeing the camaraderie and the love in this beer scene and in the professional beer scene. It was just absolutely beautiful to see brothers in arms, because we're still a very small part of the market, and everybody's fighting the good fight for flavor.
Yep.
And quality.
And there's also some really amazing after events going on at local bars, which I'm excited about. That's always a good place to mix with some of the brewers as well, make new friends. Anyway, we're excited about that.
You know what I'm excited about?
What?
Today's episode.
What are we talking about today, Chris?
Oh, I was downstairs in 508 a few weeks back, or I think in the first 2 weeks that I was working there, and somebody came downstairs and hey, there's this guy upstairs who used to brew beer at this place called Deschutes, and wanted to say hello, and I was like, what? Deschutes? I love Deschutes. What's going on with that? And who is this guy? Came up and met our guest tonight, Joe Pedicini. How you doing, Joe?
Very good, thanks.
We want to get closer to the mic, and then we can all hear you.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody.
Joe Pedicini now is in the wine business and has Monte wines.
That's right, out in Oregon.
Out in Oregon. Do you spend all of your time in Oregon?
I don't, actually. I grew up here on the East Coast. I grew up in New Jersey and moved out to Oregon in 1992 originally to follow the passion that I had for brewing beer, actually. And started out, like a lot of us do, as a home brewer, and decided I wanted to make the leap as a professional brewer, and traveled to the West Coast to try my luck in seeing if I get hired at some of my favorite breweries from out there. In doing so, I met a lot of great people, had a lot of fun in the brewing industry, but also fell in love with Pinot Noir out there.
That's awesome. So, how long had you been homebrewing before going out there?
About 4 years, actually.
4 years?
And what got you started in homebrewing?
We had a lot of carboys and equipment lying around the house because my grandparents and parents made wine as a hobby. So we had a lot of equipment available, and I enjoyed the winemaking process, but I was at that age where I was really interested in brewing, interested in beer drinking also, obviously. But I think it was because I took a trip out west and tasted something like maybe some old Pete's Wicked Ale or Sierra Nevada or something like that, and came back east and you couldn't find anything like that. So a lot of us back then decided to brew because we were trying to sort of capture a taste that wasn't available here on the East Coast.
Not to date you, but what year is back then?
Well, it was the late 80s when I first started.
It was the late 80s. That's awesome. That's the New York City Home Brewers Guild started around 1987, 1988, and we're celebrating our 25th year right now. And a lot of those people were brewing for the exact same reasons. You couldn't get a lot of these different beers, and that spawned this revolution that is thriving.
The club used to have meetings at a place, Lower East Side, called Brewski's. That doesn't exist anymore, but we
still meet at the same place for the most part. Brewski's, they were still meeting at Brewski's when I started in 2001, and then we moved. They went under different ownership, turned Brewski's into a place called Standings. Now we're right next door, but since then it's still been in relatively the same spot.
And we still have our steering committee meetings actually every month or so at Standings.
The artist formerly known as Brewski's.
Yep.
Very cool. It's a sort of a special spot. The linear mark is...
were you part of the guild at that time?
I was not. We were just kind of... we had stumbled into the place because, going back again to this time when, Beck's Dark was sort of an exotic beer back then. And Brewski's at the time had the entire lineup of Anchor Steam beers.
Whoa.
I mean, Liberty, the Wheat, the Foghorn,
That's
all the time.
That's impressive.
Really? That is impressive. That's amazing.
And it was all really fresh and delicious, and we didn't really understand what was going on because you couldn't find those beers in other places in town. But Brewski's had them, and so it was sort of, we found it, I guess, luck or some sort of a magnetic reaction or something like that.
And where did you get your homebrew supplies back then?
Milan Labs, which was in downtown New York. I don't even remember. I think it was on Canal Street or something like that. I don't remember.
Yep,
But,
I've heard of it.
Yeah.
I wonder when that closed.
I don't know.
It was a fun place to visit. It was kind of, they had their own way of organizing things, so it took a little while to find things. But
What did you like to brew when you were brewing before moving out west? And did you go out when you went out west? Did you bring a bunch of your home brew in hopes of taking that as samples to try and get a job in the industry?
well, I did, and I also, I did a lot of research and I did a lot of experimentation with brewing and with trying to grow my own yeast cultures and things like that. So by the time I was ready to dive in, I was pretty knowledgeable, and there were a lot of folks that were starting out in the industry, and they kind of wanted to go the route of getting in and maybe washing kegs for a little while and then sort of advancing into the brew house. But I really had my sights set on getting into the brew house. So I did as much preparation as I could, and I did an internship here at a place at the time called Zip City.
Yep.
That was a really neat little Austrian brew house with a double decoction mash tun, and
Oh, wow.
Now, who was the brewer there?
a guy named Bob Berg.
Okay.
And so he
Not
had
the
actually
saxophonist Bob Berg.
No, a different one. A
Confused
different
with the sax, okay.
Bob may have played sax too. I don't know. But he had just gotten back from Siebel and was classmates with some folks that were out west. So, I had done this internship with Bob, and I was able to kind of drop some names while I was out there, and so a lot of trial and error. And I wound up I really kind of zeroed in on Deschutes because I love the area. Central Oregon is one of the most beautiful places in the world.
Yeah, it is.
And I really liked the beers also very much at the time. Yeah. The sort of that you asked about what styles we were making. I mean, that sort of Northwestern Cascade influenced pale ale was, especially at the time, it was something really special.
Oh, yeah.
We absolutely take that for granted these days, but
Yeah.
Sierra Nevada is still just amazing.
Although I think now, though, with all the hops, like we're drinking this Eastern Standard, which I find kind of juicy in this tropical fruit way.
Peekskill.
It's absolutely delicious from Peekskill Brewery with the brewmaster Jeff O'Neill up there, and it's probably I think it's become my favorite East Coast IPA. It just came to New York City a few weeks ago, I think, somewhere right around New York Craft Beer Week,
Yeah.
and it's absolutely delicious. But now, I mean, we have these IPAs made with Nelson Sauvin hops and Sriracha Ace and all these other kind of more exotic hops, and so I think actually Cascade is pale ale with just Cascades. It's kind of
back,
becoming
man.
special
It's coming
again.
back.
It's like a novelty.
People have been doing all this experiment, and I think that's going to continue. But I think some people have gone back to their kind of American hop roots. So
I think so. I mean, there's so many new varieties out there that just pack such a punch. And,
Yep. And have some flavors that we haven't seen in hops before.
Yes.
So, which is one thing I'm excited about. Craft Brewers Conference, we always get to go see what new hop varieties are coming onto the market.
Yeah, it's always exciting.
Yeah.
And a lot of these super high alpha hops that have these wonderful aromatics also that make it real easy for for making these IPAs that are popular and stuff like that.
Yeah,
And,
that are really bitter.
yeah, or that have in the old days it took a lot of hop flowers to
Right.
get that kind of flavor punch.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that so a lot of these new varieties are fun to use in the brew house too because they're a little bit less labor intensive.
Yeah, that's true. So you were hired at Deschutes. How did that come about, or what'd you start as? How did you start there?
I started in the brew house. They were in the process of an expansion, and so they were taking the current brew house, which was actually the brew pub, and they were going to that I think had an 8-barrel brew house that was being pushed to 10 or 12 barrels or something like that. And they were bringing in a new JV Northwest 50-barrel system.
Oh, wow.
Across town. So they had, when I started there, basically ground had just been broken, and So they had started the long process of starting the new brew house, and they knew that they'd need a whole new brewing team and so forth. So they started looking and interviewing people and so forth.
Cool.
And basically, as good timing, and I got there, and I felt really lucky because I was able to spend the first year there mostly working in the brew house, which was on a much smaller scale.
Right, the smaller.
Yeah.
Before they
I'm
expanded.
sorry,
The 8 or
at
the
the brew
12?
pub. The brew pub.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
The 8-barrel system?
It was an 8-barrel system, but we had we were maxing it out so that we could
Fill 12-barrel fermenters?
we could meet the demand that,
Okay, yeah.
folks were looking for. Yeah. So even the kettle was pushed as high as it could go. And
Right.
Yeah.
We were sort of doing the best we could to get the beer out to these markets up in Portland and Seattle that were just dying for it and couldn't get
Yeah.
enough.
That's awesome. We're going to take a really quick break,
Yep.
and when we come back, we'll talk more about your experience there and
Cool.
how that transferred over to wine and the love of Pinot Noir.
Artisanal Imports is an importer of specialty beers from England, Germany, Belgium, and beyond. Their portfolio of fine ales and lagers is broad and represents a wide range of beer styles, but it is not their mission to collect every small brewery across Europe. They believe in working in full partnership with their breweries and are careful to select beers that are high quality and interesting, but that do not overlap one to the next. For more information, visit www.artisanalimports.com.
Hey, welcome back to Fuhmentaboudit on heritageradionetwork.org. We're here with our special guest, Joe Pedicini of Montebruno Wines. Hi, Joe.
Hello there.
And we've been talking about how Joe started out homebrewing and then in Jersey, and then moved out west, got a job at Deschutes.
That's right.
When it was still just a brew pub before they built their production brewery.
That's correct.
How long were they in production at the time that you joined 13 before they drew the
I think they
expansion?
started in 86 or 87.
86. Yeah.
They were one of the early ones in Oregon also.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's. And what were the flagship beers that you guys were brewing at the time? We don't even get Deschutes in New York, so I've
Yeah,
had it when
yeah.
I go out west, or I think you can get it,
And it's still a
kinda
great
close to here.
beer.
Oh, yeah,
I
it's
mean,
fantastic.
Not that I had it back then, but I know that it's one of my
Yeah,
favorites.
that's always one when I was in Vegas a couple months ago, and that was a I made sure to have several Deschutes while I was out there because
Yeah,
they really
yeah.
are great.
Well, they do a good job. They at the time it was Black Butte Porter was their
Yeah.
big
Yeah.
sort of flagship beer, and we were doing a few that unfortunately aren't in their repertoire anymore. They kind of grew out of them, and those are the ones that I kind of those are just memories, and those are the real special ones. There was one called Bachelor Bitter that was just mostly on draft, just at the pub, and we had a lot of fun playing around with that, especially in cask format, and dry hopping the hell out of them. And
That's awesome. And back then, man, not that many people were doing casks. I can't
No,
imagine.
no.
So
No, just a few. So it was a lot. It was a lot of fun. We were kind of we were doing a lot of experimentation and really kind of feeling, like Chris had mentioned, being at the Craft Brewers Conference and the feeling of camaraderie and sort of this sense of sort of a fraternalness with brewers, and it's really a wonderful thing that has been going on as far back as I can remember in the country here, and it still seems very strong. It still seems
oh
like
yeah,
people, you're traveling through the country and you work in the brewing industry and you stop by a brewery and say hi and you're friendly. Pretty soon you're probably going to be meeting some people that work there and making new friends, and that's just how it goes.
Absolutely, that's how you're
Yeah.
here.
Exactly.
We've made
Living
a point to
proof.
say hello. It's pretty awesome and pretty fun, and I can't wait to brew with you over there. I think we talked a little bit about doing a collaboration at some point.
That'd be
and
fun.
I would absolutely
Yeah.
love to do
Yeah.
that. Maybe we could do a bachelor bitter.
Well, we slightly tweak the name maybe.
yeah.
But also you were saying you wanted to experiment with some beers fermented or matured in oak, and
Absolutely.
Yeah, I have some barrels that are in good shape that I could pass along.
Absolutely want to do that. And I'd absolutely also would like to use some Pinot Noir grapes. What is the character of Pinot Noir grapes?
Well, it varies, but I've never heard of anybody using them in the brewing process. Would you be using them?
I would want the fermentables, so I'd do it
Okay.
like a portion, almost like a braggot, but on the wine side kind of
Okay.
thing. And people have been starting to do that. We, Marianne, we tasted some beers from Switzerland, or was it? Yeah, I think
Yes.
the other day some saisons, two saisons that were both. It was both the same base saison. One of them fermented with white grapes, and the other fermented with I think Cabernet grapes. Or
Yeah, I can't remember the grape. I can't remember the exact grape, but
it was
they were
delicious.
both. Yeah.
Interesting.
It was really
Cool.
awesome
Yeah.
and really fun.
And then I know Garrett Oliver over at Brooklyn Brewery has been. He does a lot of stuff with Red Hook Winery barrels, and also he's used their leaves.
The leaves to
he leaves the
experiment
leaves in there, and he's done I think some yeast experimentations with them too, using some of their yeast. So, those are a couple that we can think of, but
Yeah.
And I'd love to have fun doing all that stuff.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, I mean there's. I think that there's more places in the world than we realize where there's crossovers between the brewing and the winemaking fields, and the two just have a lot in common. And there's that same sort of family quality that you have in the wine industry, also with people that can appreciate what you're doing because they do the same thing. They're toiling in the cellars, or whether it's being a brewer and having to dig out the mash, you know what it's like, and you know what it's like to sort of experiment with a new beer and worry about it as it's fermenting and stuff. This is all stuff that the average folks don't really understand what we go through.
that's true. Now, speaking of, I have been to some Oregon wineries years ago, and I can remember hearing in some other, other wineries in other parts of the country, but I always hear that when they do harvest, that they always you have beer as kind of the drink for their harvest drinks.
Well, I think it's almost like a cliche now, but it does take a lot of beer to make good wine.
That's
There's a lot of truth to
a
that.
lot of beer to make good wine. Here.
So let's talk about how you move from brewing at Deschutes into wine making.
Well, really, it was like I sort of touched on in the beginning. My parents made wine at home, so there was it was sort of an important part of our annual sort of cycle of life, and so it was something that I had been exposed to from a very young age. So it was really just as much of a part of who I am as the brewing side was.
Right.
And so I think it was just a function of the Pinot Noir that I found in Oregon was just something that really moved me. It's we were talking a little bit about Chris had asked what sort of flavor characteristic will Pinot Noir possibly bring to a beer. And it's hard to say sort of what varietal characteristics Pinot Noir has. It does have sort of cherry, and it does have some earthiness and maybe raspberry flavors. But what makes Pinot Noir unique is that it tastes of a place. So when it comes to Oregon and growing Pinot Noir in the Willamette Valley, it tastes of the Willamette Valley, and it's sort of a special place, and that's what makes it sort of what it is, and that's why. When it comes to places like Burgundy, the grape grown there is Pinot Noir. And it's so sought after and so expensive because it tastes of a really special place, and it's been grown there for so many hundreds of years that it really has the ability to sort of transport you to that place, no matter where you are in the world drinking this wine. And I feel that we have something. It's not the same, but it's still very exciting in Oregon, and so that's something that just kind of grabbed a hold of me.
Right, makes sense. Now, when did the wine industry in the Willamette Valley kind of come into its own, I guess, for lack of a better term?
Well,
I mean, it's been there for a while.
Yeah, some of the older vineyards that were planted in the mid and late 60s, so yeah, it's been around for quite a while. And it's kind of hard to say. I think that they both kind of grew around the same time. There's a lot of, again, that same sort of feeling of camaraderie. There was a lot of that going on, crossing over the boundaries of wine and beer, and even food and sort of focus on regional delicacies in Oregon. That was all kind of happening at the same time. And the scene in general there right now is just amazing.
Yeah.
It was always really cool, but compared to what it was in 1992, it's really grown incredibly.
Yeah.
Wonderful restaurants, wonderful culture, wonderful wines, beers, and
spirits. There's a lot of distillers,
micro
distillers in Portland.
Yeah, and not to mention all of the great mushroom producers and great vegetable growers, everything.
Yeah, so lots of local. I haven't been to Portland. Well, actually, the only time I've been to Portland was back in 2007. I went to the Oregon Brewers Fest. But even back then, and then I think we were there for 4 days. We hit a bunch of brewery and brew pubs on our first day, and then did the Oregon Brewers Fest. But we actually, one of the last days, we did a wine country tour. So I think we hit a couple of breweries and then maybe 3 wineries. But it was absolutely amazing to see. We did go to some nice restaurants, and it was an incredible scene then, and I know, from what I read and hear about, it's even more so now.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, you can't travel very far in Oregon without hitting a good, interesting brewery.
Yeah.
And the restaurants are following right alongside.
Yeah.
There's this whole movement now with the area around Bend, Central Oregon, where there's they're saying now that there's more breweries per capita in that region than there are in Portland. And Portland sort of started it all.
Yeah.
But a lot of these guys that are, they worked in larger breweries for a while, and then they kind of spun off to do their own thing.
Right.
And they're doing, a handful of barrels a year, but they're doing really interesting, time-consuming, high-quality, expensive beers.
Yeah.
And they're finding a market for them. It's really exciting.
Yeah, and that was the other thing is when we were at the Oregon Brewers Fest, we had tons of IPAs, pale ale and IPA, very Northwest hoppy pale ales and IPAs. And there weren't actually, at that time, there weren't a whole lot of other styles. But when we were going around town, we actually went to Hair of the Dog, had an open house that same day. We went there. That was absolutely incredible. I mean, Alan's been doing, unusual barrel-aged and not IPA styles for a long time. I mean, he does a very good pale ale as well. But now, reading, I mean, there's Cascade. There's a lot of people doing some very kind of cutting-edge experimental stuff out there. I know there's other ones that are just not coming to mind right now, but that's pretty exciting.
And that was exemplified also when we went to the National Homebrew Conference last year, too.
Oh, yeah, in Seattle.
We were expecting to see a lot of, high-octane IPAs from Northwest, and there was actually a well-rounded diversity of...
Yeah, both for club night and pro night. So...
Yeah.
Because a lot of the clubs, I mean, there were a lot of local Washington clubs, but a lot of the clubs had come up from Oregon, Central Oregon, Western Oregon, and that was club night was absolutely so. Club night at the National Homebrewers Conference is just where each club has a booth and serves anywhere between like 8 and 42 beers. I mean, it's
a beer festival that's by the fans for the fans, and
and they don't have to deal with sort of. Market needs or wants, so they just do what they like, and it's a lot of fun.
We actually had some mushroom beer.
Yeah.
I think we had shiitake mushroom beer, maybe. We had a smoked apple blonde that was made. It was just a traditional blonde, but the guy had smoked apples and then added the smoked apples at the end of his boil, and it was delicious. But things like that
the Mountain Dew
you would never
beer.
see.
Pretty interesting.
Yes.
20% Mountain Dew.
That was at the Big Lebowski booth. There was a club that had a Big Lebowski theme. So,
Got to wear your bathrobe, I guess.
Yeah. Oh,
So-
yes, definitely.
Real quick, because we're actually running out of time. This is part 1 of 2 episodes, and today we're talking more about Joe's beer life. Before we officially leave, when did you leave, and how did you start Monte Bruno?
Oh, so I had moved back to the East Coast and spent some time out here. I decided that I wanted to produce Pinot Noir. Started doing some experimenting. Long story short, my first commercial vintage was 2003.
2003.
That's pretty fun,
Yeah.
and you've been doing it since, and it's going well.
It's going really
It's
well.
delicious. We were at
A natural wine tasting.
natural wine tasting, and yours were awesome.
Yeah, actually, they were one of our favorite, for sure.
Absolutely.
Oh, thank you so
So-
much. I mean, we're really excited about, again, like what Oregon gives us. The gift from Mother Nature in Oregon is really something special.
Yeah. So that is it for today's show. Tune in next Monday, April 1st, for part 2 with Joe. We're going to talk more about, about his entry into winemaking, kind of about winemaking, because Chris and I don't know much about it, and
That's
we're betting
true.
if you're a home brewer, you don't either. So we'll talk more about making wine and then...
What natural wine is,
Yep, and all that.
fermentation
So-
vessels, temperatures, la la la.
So join us again
Sounds cool.
at 7 p.m. Monday, April 1st for part 2.
On Fuhmentaboudit.
Thanks for listening to this program on heritageradionetwork.org. You can find all of our archived programs on our website or as podcasts in the iTunes Store by searching Heritage Radio Network. You can like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at heritage_radio. You can email us questions at any time at info@heritageradionetwork.org. Heritage Radio Network is a non-profit organization. To donate and become a member, visit our website today. Thanks for listening.
Running through your brain, driving you crazy. All for no campaign, like a red-eyed wild star.
Hey there, I'm Lee Ullman here with some big news from the National Young Farmers Coalition. We're partnering with Heritage Radio Network on a special season of The Farm Report. It's all about what's happening with the Farm Bill and how it impacts farmers and eaters.
I am growing diversified vegetables on land that's been in our family for 150 years.
And so with the pandemic, gentrification, property values going up, we had to sell the land and we lost it.
Join us as we uncover the untold stories behind this massive piece of legislation that shapes how we grow our food, what we eat, and so much more.
The problems we have had, those are things that come from earlier Farm Bill and USDA policy, right? Like Earl Butts, get big or get out.
It's my responsibility to know not only what I'm eating, but then like how that all came to be, and realize like, wow, like this piece of legislation, all this money, like it's technically something that I support as a taxpayer.
While Congress debates the next Farm Bill, this is not just an invitation to listen. It's a call to action. Be part of the conversation. Subscribe to the Farm Report on Heritage Radio Network, wherever you listen to podcasts.